Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about Western justice and jurisprudence, and just the extent to which it's disappearing down the sinkhole at speed. Needlessly so, the globalists need to have, as they see it, a certain amount of control to force the globalist project on us, because they're forcing it on an unwilling population. They couldn't win at the ballot box. There's no way they can win other than by infiltrating our body politic and using various activists controlling the media. But they're also using Western justice system, the jurisprudence that took many hundreds of years, indeed more than 1,000 years, indeed more than 2,000 years to develop. And they have to bend the law, its application, the judicial process, the jurisprudence, the due legal process. They have to bend all that to their needs. It is now being formulated to serve the globalist purpose and nothing else. Is it there for the rule of law and independent, impartial justice? Now that to whatever extent it was imperfect, and it was imperfect, by the way, to whatever extent it existed, it pretty much has been trashed. People are getting arrested and imprisoned for using the wrong pronoun on some transgender person, but you can disrupt, sit in the road and disrupt traffic. You can do all sorts of climate change activism. You can say the most terrible, hateful things about white people. You can corrupt, primary school age children with sex shows featuring drag queens. You can do all sorts of things, and no one will touch you. But you annoy the globalists and their project, and then you're going to end up in prison. Now, there's certain things the globalists do to undermine, destroy, and just crush the fabric of Western society, and they're going about that as hard as they can. And if you oppose that, then you could very well end up in prison on bullshit made up charges. Now, the rule of law is that the law applies to everyone equally. So burn down the building or beat someone up or murder them or something, then that's a crime. It's on the statute books as a crime. So I can be arrested, and the Department of Prosecutions will take me to court, and then a judge and a jury will decide if on my guilt or innocence, and if guilty, then there's going to be fines or prison time or something, community service, whatever, but something. So that's how the system's meant to work. But if I'm a BLM activist and I burn down a building and beat someone up or kill them, then no one's interested in prosecuting that. There were very few people in all those BLM riots in the US, for example, or here or in Britain. There were very few people who were actually arrested, and of those arrested, even fewer were charged. Of those that actually made it to court, many were given a slap on the wrist. And there's only a very small handful that got prison time, and really they had to murder someone. It had to be on camera for them to get jail time. And in some cases, someone burned a building down. There was a guy inside who was burned to death, and the perpetrator, I think, only got 3 years, whereas someone murders somebody, misgenders somebody, and they can get that 3 years or longer, and it's that sort of application of justice. So the Justice Department in the West, or departments in the West, increasingly are existing to implement the globalist project and to intimidate those that may get in the way of the globalist project. And we see that, say, in the United States, where the demonstrators who demonstrate outside of abortion clinics, for example, and they attempt to engage women entering the abortion clinic for abortion, engage them in conversation to say, well, have you thought about this, thought about that? and so they're I don't know what you call them. But you wouldn't call them aggressive activists, or they're not stopping people or disrupting, as in stopping traffic or something like that. So they're just on the sidewalk doing talking. Some are a little bit more than that. They may go into the foyer of the abortion clinic and so on. And that, I think, is maybe a little bit too far. But nonetheless, those people, the FBI in the United States, which is just 100% politicized now, in my opinion, is now going after these people, arresting them with dramatic FBI raids, and I mean, it's insane. I mean, it's something out of a fucking dystopia. But so they're going after these demonstrators and activists, but the BLM people, the climate change activists that physically block traffic and create mayhem in the in the cities and so on, or go into for example, art galleries and try and deface artworks, or tear down statues and so on. Are they arrested? Nah, because they are doing things that support the globalist project. See, they're pulling down the statue, pulling down a statue of a white guy. So he's a white guy from a couple of hundred years ago, but he's straight, he's white, he's a damn fucking fascist Nazi Hitler, and they've got a right to pull him down. They're doing good work. But wait a minute, it's public property they're destroying. They've conspired and organised to do it. They're breaking so many laws to do this. Do they have a permit to do that? And so on. And so they're breaking numerous laws. I mean, there's plenty of them can be arrested. It would be an easy gig, and dragged into court and should be fined. The restitution of the statue, for example, should be fined or indeed imprisoned if that's deemed warranted by the independent judge in a court of law. But let's suppose they do get arrested and taken to court. Any pro-globalist activists have this incredible ability to gain a sympathetic judge, and the prosecutors are very tame. They don't really push. There's no hard cross-examinations. It's very gentle. It's quite clear that they're just going through the motions. They don't want to send these people to prison or get them a heavy fine. So they're going through the motions to make it look good, to make it appear as if justice is being done, and if the rule of law is being applied equally. And then they get this incredibly sympathetic judge who just happens to be an activist, maybe a former NGO lawyer who's now been given a gig on the bench. And so this activist judge, you're okay. Hey, you're doing good work there. We all know these damn straight white males are fucking fascist Nazis. You only pull down a Nazi statue. You Nazis, they're everywhere. Hitler, I saw Hitler only 5 minutes ago. Hitler, Nazis. And so they pull down the statue, and there's no penalty for that. Yeah, you walk free, or you pay $50 fine and off you go. We won't record any criminal conviction against you. And these people are back on the street doing the same thing the next day or the day after. But if you're opposing globalization or doing acts that limit the damaging effect of globalization, the globalization project generally, then you're targeted, because you're not allowed to do that. The globalization project must be unimpeded, and those that may impede it directly or indirectly, they are now enemies of globalization. If you are enemies of globalization, you are an enemy of the Western Justice Department. And then the opposite is the case. If you get dragged into court, incredibly, a judge that is seriously hostile to you happens to hear the case. I mean, just at that, unbelievable. Because the way it's meant to work is the next judge available is the one that hears the case. But that doesn't work in this. To what extent it did work before, because I know quite a few people in the judges and the like, and they're very much, as soon as a judge finishes a case, they then pick the next case up off it. Sometimes there are specialist judges in certain areas, but a case like this, pulling down a statue, that wouldn't be a specialist judge. But so they managed to assign activist judges to let off the pro-globalist activists, but the anti-globalist activists, such as people demonstrating outside an abortion clinic, they're anti the globalist policies and the globalist shtick and the globalist project and the objectives the globalists are trying to meet. They're against it, so they do get arrested. They get really chased hard by the FBI and the Justice Department, and they incredibly get judges who are super against those that may demonstrate outside an abortion clinic or may do that sort of thing. That's it. You're finished, buddy. You're going to prison. So you get disproportionately big sentences for those that are in any way oppose globalization, whilst low sentences for those that contribute to the globalization project. Now, whether that globalization project is the destruction and humiliation of Western society or something else like the mass migration or something, it doesn't matter. But those who support it get treated very leniently, and those who may oppose it get treated very harshly. So we don't have the rule of law anymore. That's pretty much gone now. And we don't have due legal process, and we don't even have the independence of the judiciary. The globalists have well and truly fucked it. And one of the greatest things about, and having, again, as I've mentioned many times now, traveled all over the world, one of the great things about Western civilization was its independent judiciary and the reliance on evidence and that sort of thing. Now, you may think, well, they're small things. How can any court function without it? But in fact, it's quite rare. The Western countries were really the only ones that had it. In every other country, it's either the courts are either owned by powerful vested interest or owned by the theologians in the case of Islamic nations, or owned by activist groups and so on. The West was unique in its independent judiciary and the reliance on evidence, and due legal process and that sort of thing. And now that's gone. Now the West resembles, the Western justice system resembles more of a banana republic than it ever did. I just want to make a sort of point here as well on cash bail, because that's a bit of a thing in the United States at the moment, and it's affecting other areas around the Western world as well. Now, the argument about cash bail was that black people are disproportionately the ones getting arrested on relatively minor crimes, or like petty assaults, petty theft, those sorts of things, marital disputes, small time drug dealing, that sort of thing. So, or they haven't been able to pay a speeding fine, and so there's a warrant out for them, and they get arrested for that. It's those sorts of things. So they say, well, these guys don't have any money, so why should they be required to post bail? Why don't we just put them back on the street? And these sort of ancillary arguments to that was, well, look, if we lock them up, they're going to lose their job, then they can't pay the fine anyway. Maybe they're looking after children. So, what are the children going to do while the parents are locked up? And what if they don't have a relative that can look after them? And so on and so on and so on. So they're saying that the being arrested, or being imprisoned rather, would be so disruptive to these people's lives that it's better actually that we put them back on the street and get social workers to work with them to try and rehabilitate them. Now there's certain merits in those arguments, by the way. Why imprison someone because they're late paying a speeding fine? That I think those are, it's a valid point. But the way it's worked, it's sort of, as with all these things, the whole process has been taken over by ideological fanatics, and they can't see the forest for the trees on this thing. So even if someone's living on the street. They're unemployed. They've got no income. They've got no children. They've got no, they've got no responsibilities, and no life that's there to protect. They're dangerous. They're career criminals, and they're being put back on the street. People who live, they've got nothing to lose. Their lives come to a big fat zero anyway. So killing somebody or whatever is, who cares? They're destined for prison anyway. So why would they care one way or another? So and a lot of them have mental health problems, drug addiction, things like that. So their only income is maybe as a drug dealer on the street. So they're putting those people back on the street, and those people, needless to say, are committing additional crimes. In fact, they pretty much see it as a green light to commit more crimes. So the only thing that was preventing them from committing crimes was their detention, and that's being thrown away on the basis that it's racist. So, but I've noticed there's no, even though white people can post, the argument too that the whole idea of this bail was racist because black people couldn't afford to post the bail, whereas white people could. Therefore, white people were getting out of doing jail time because they could post the bail. So there was a reform that the black people were given much lower bail, but that still didn't work. Then in order to try and sort of get equal outcomes, they increased the bail for white people, but they still were managing to pay it and so on. So none of this really worked. And you can see it's amateurs and ideologically driven sort of doctrinaire, low IQ amateurs that are trying to sort of massage this into something that meets their ideological requirements for equity and equal outcomes, and failing rather miserably at it. But it's the public who are suffering here by the people who are people getting killed, and the murders that the people who are released commit. But it comes back to this idea of the people they release that continue to destabilize and demoralize and crush and make dysfunctional Western society. Therefore, they are still performing a service for the globalists, and therefore they are still a protected class. And the white people have got a problem with it, stopping that. They are then stopping these people who are released from prison, stopping these people from causing the decay and dysfunction in Western society. Thus, they are enemies of the globalists. And we need to keep that that paradigm in mind, because that's how the globalists see it. Anyone that contributes to the demise, destruction, humiliation, or reduction and dysfunction in Western society is performing a service for the globalists, and thus is a protected class. Those who oppose them are a dangerous class, and the Justice Department have to go after them. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.